It is very important to make sure that you have somebody doing your domestic relations order that does have an understanding of military law as it relates to family law.
Do you know the process for filing for a divorce if you or the other person are in the military? Well, that's what we're going to ask the lawyer on today's episode. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and my guest is Jillian French with the Vaught Law Firm in Austin, Texas. Jillian, thank you for making some time to answer our questions.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk. Can a spouse get a divorce from an active duty service person?
Yes, they can. The process for filing for divorce differs in each state, but just because the person is active duty does not prevent you from filing the divorce. You may not be able to finalize the divorce if the active duty service member is currently deployed, but that doesn't prevent you from being able to file, potentially get temporary orders entered, or get discovery issued.
Okay, so the deployment was going to be my next question. So you have to wait until the deployment is over?
You can, if they raise an issue under the Service Member Civil Relief Act. If they invoke that, then you do have to wait. Sometimes the service members do not invoke that because they have an interest in getting the divorce done as well. Usually they have an attorney here in the state working for them that they have communication with. I have been that attorney on many occasions when I have had deployed clients, and there's an interest to get it done.
Okay. Now, what about military benefits? How do those work as far as who may be entitled to what?
Post-divorce, the biggest question that we get is, am I entitled to military retirement? I think that we're going to get more into that in a minute, but the other benefits that you might be entitled to could be TRICARE health insurance. If you were married to the service member, if you're what's going to be a former spouse, and you were married to the service member for 15 years, during 15 years of active duty service, you're entitled to 1 year of TRICARE health insurance post-divorce. If that number increases to 20 years of marriage, during which time the service member served 20 years of active duty service, then you would be entitled to TRICARE for more than 1 year. The only problem with this is that TRICARE coverage for former spouses does not include vision or dental. So it would only be the medical insurance coverage.
Let's talk about those retirement benefits. How does that work, and what sort of retirement benefits might somebody be eligible for?
Sure. So there's a legacy system, which is the normal system that everyone is used to hearing about, which is time in the military equals time earned towards military retirement. Okay. So typically what that means is that no matter how long you're married to a service member, that you would be entitled to a percentage of their military retired pay should they retire with retirement. Under the legacy system, they need to be in the military for at least 20 years of service, and that can be earned through reserve service, which just takes longer to get to the 20-year mark. More recently, they've rolled out what's called a blended retirement system. The blended retirement system actually allows for some of this retirement benefit to be paid out or earned earlier, so that if the service member does not serve the full 20 years, there's still something there, and thus there's still something to divide earlier on.
So you mentioned they may be eligible for a percentage. What sort of percentage? How's that decided?
Typically what happens is for an active duty service member, they look at the months of marriage during the service time, and then over the total months of service, and then divide that by 2, because in Texas, we are a community property state with a presumption of a 50% split. If you're a reservist, it changes a little bit because reservists are based off of a point system and not a number of months system.
It sounds complicated, and having somebody like yourself who understands all this would really be helpful.
It is very important to make sure that you have somebody doing your domestic relations order that does have an understanding of military law as it relates to family law, to make sure that you're getting all of the benefits you're entitled to, and to make sure that your spouse, if you are the service member, is not asking for more than what they may be entitled to.
And it seems like anytime you get government involved in things, it tends to be even a little more complicated.
Yes, it does. The other part of this is that everything that you do, the order, the domestic relations order, granting the division of the retirement and the benefits, all go through DFAS, which is the federal entity that is the accounting service for the military and the federal government. If they don't like what's been written and they don't agree with how it's been written, they will reject it and tell you to go back and fix it and come back with a new version. It's not a situation you want to be in. You want to get it right the first time.
What about child custody? Is that different for military divorces than, say, in a civilian divorce?
It's not supposed to be considered whenever you have an active duty service member as sort of a mark against them. But the reality is that being a service member means that you're going to be moving around a lot. Sometimes you have people who are getting divorced who are both service members, in which case it becomes tricky trying to figure out what the custody arrangements are going to be, since both of them could be moved to different duty stations in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. So there's just more considerations to be made, like what happens if a service member gets deployed? Who has the child during that person's period of possession or the right to enroll them in school? What happens if both parents are deployed at the same time? These are just things that need to be considered and included in a divorce decree. So
a lot more things are involved than, say, in a typical civilian divorce, and these need to be worked out ahead of time.
Yes, that is correct. If they're not worked out ahead of time, a lot of service members believe that they can just fill out their family plan through the military, through the DEER's office, and that is not sufficient, and it will not hold up in a court of law. You need a court order in order for it to be enforceable and in order for the plan to be able to be followed.
What other advice do you have, Jillian, for folks in the military families that may be considering divorce?
My advice would be to make sure that before you do anything, before you decide to file for divorce or actually go and file for it, make sure you talk to an attorney and research to make sure that attorney is familiar and well-versed in what issues are going to affect you, which is going to be the military benefits, the military retirement, knowing how divorce and custody cases work whenever there is a military service member or two, and make sure that you have all the information you need and feel comfortable before you proceed.
Great advice and very informational. Thank you for answering our questions today, Jillian.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Austin attorney Jillian French. If you want the best information or you'd like to be able to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, make sure to go to askthelawyers.com. Also, please take a second to hit the subscribe button down at the bottom so you'll know about future episodes. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with askthelawyers.com.